I am David Evans and delighted to be here. If you might have seen our session yesterday, we talked about culture from Collage Group. I'm the Chief Insights Officer at Collage Group, and culture is very near and dear to us, and delighted to be hosting the panel today here. So what I'm going to do is I will start by just basically inviting our panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about how they use culture to be more relevant. And I'll start at my immediate left with Brian, and we'll just go down the line.
Thanks, David. Brian Jones. I'm the Senior Creative Director at Mint Mobile. I run our in-house agency, which is called Full Bars. Yes, that is a wireless joke. And yeah, for us, the way we use culture, we're a challenger brand, right? So we're every day going after the big boys, Verizon and AT&T. And so for us, culture is really about listening to what's going on out there. People hate Verizon and they hate AT&T, even if they have them, and even if they're afraid to switch from them. So it's really about amplifying kind of like how people are feeling out there, because our role is really, of course, we want you to come subscribe to Mint and leave one of those guys. Our whole, the way we get people is stealing them, right, from the other people. There are no new wireless customers out there. You have to grab them from somebody else. And so if we're going to convince people that we really are what we say we are, which is you can pay $15 a month instead of $200 a month for the exact same service, we have to meet them where they are. We have to listen to what they're saying and what their frustrations are. And we also have to amplify those when we see them and say, hey, you're right. You should be angry. This is bullshit that you're paying this much money. These guys are screwing you over and kind of hiding all this stuff. So we come at it from a real kind of like consumer advocacy type of way, but we also try to have fun with it, because if you're super serious about that stuff, who wants to listen to that, right? So make it entertaining, make it fun, but we also kind of want to be the voice in the room that's like, no, you're not crazy. This could be better.
Great. David.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out on a school day. I'm a Global Senior Director of Licensing and Cultural Marketing at Kellanova. Does anybody know the brands at Kellanova? Well, we're a new company, just minted about 5 months ago. We used to be called Kellogg, and we have wonderful brands like Pringles, Cheez-It, Pop-Tart, Eggo, RX Bar, Morningstar Farms, and of course, globally, we have a lot of our great cereals like Frosties, Cocoa Pops, Fruit Loops, and so forth. So for me, culture, it's really our target consumer is hard to reach. They're complex, they're the next generation, and so we want to elevate our brands and recruit the next generation through their lifestyle, through culture. It's like passion points, things that are very meaningful to them in ways that they show off their personality, their values. And some of our brands also have personality and values. And so some of those passion points, whether it's music, could be skateboarding, could be fashion, gaming, and sport. We want to make sure those two personalities come through in an intersection that's meaningful. And so we want to meet them where they are. Gone are the days where our marketing dollars are a little waning in effectiveness and efficiency, where we just do something and they come to us. We're going to meet them and really try to excite them in a way that's meaningful. So that's my definition.
That's great, David. Sonia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Oblitey. I'm Senior Director, Global Marketing, Match Group. So Match Group, I'm sure you're familiar, owns every single dating app except for Bumble and Grindr. So previously, I was leading global international marketing for OkCupid. So when it comes to cultural and being cultural relevant, I think for me, I look at it from who is my brand? Like, how do I speak? How does my audience take me for? So if I walk into this room, what does my brand say? Does my brand say, what's up? Do they say hi? Do they say hello? So I spend a lot of time just thinking about our brand tone of voice. But I feel like once we develop who our brand is, it's easier then to be in the culture, be in that moment, because you are a person. Especially when it comes to dating, because you're matching on things that you're interested in. So we definitely weigh heavily into politics. We don't shy away from politics, especially OkCupid. But I'm learning more and more that our audience, regardless of your age, they're all over social. They're all over Twitters and your TikToks. So it's almost like having a persona and being a person on these platforms. So you're able to not only participate, but also be almost like a fly on the wall. Perfect example. I love this example. About 2 weeks ago, I don't know if anyone follows the Shade Room on Instagram. Well, Popeyes entered the chat, right? And they commented under a post in the Shade Room something about like Sukiyana or something that's happening in pop culture. And they had like over 15,000 comments. And they were talking to Popeyes as if Popeyes was a person. Like I know Popeyes didn't enter the chat, or Popeyes, you still owe me the biscuit. And I was like, this to me is like really being in like the speed of culture, like right there, because everyone is talking to Popeyes as a person, right? And not taking them seriously, but at the same time taking them seriously. So that's how I see it.
I love that. Cool. That's a good example. Thank you for your service. I met my husband on Match. I'm sure you hear that a lot. But.
Same. I met my wife on there too, so thank you.
Awesome. I love it.
I'm Jessica Serrano. I lead marketing for Dig. Any New Yorkers here? Anybody know Diggin'? What? Okay. All right.
Thursday.
So Dig is a restaurant concept out of the Northeast. And when I think about culture, it definitely reminds me of the evolution that I've gone through with the brand, and that Dig was really founded on the concept of farm to table, which was very innovative in 2011 and is kind of table stakes now. So when I inherited the brand, it became clear to me that while that's always going to be critical to our foundation, it really wasn't answering the question for our customer of, so what? What does that mean to me? Why is that important to my life? And so that's really been the journey that I've been on from a cultural standpoint, is really tapping into the insight that people are obsessed with cooking, but also kind of afraid of cooking. We love to watch all of the cooking shows, et cetera, but the average American knows how to make like 5 plates, and one of them is eggs. And so that's really what we have been tapping into as a brand over the last, call it 18 months, is that we love to cook so that you don't have to. And so we really peel back the curtains and we share our love of cooking. We don't gatekeep. If you want to know how we make our mac and cheese, like, we're happy to share that. But also, if you're not trying to do that on a Wednesday night, come in and we got you. So I think that has really been an interesting journey for us as a brand when it comes to cultural relevance.
Gotcha. Okay, we're going to pull up before we go back down. Pulling up meaning, what is the definition of culture? And why does it matter to marketing? Why don't we start going the other way with Jessica?
Well, I was going to say you should start with Brian, because one of the things that we were chatting about earlier,
you can flip it back to him. That's okay.
Yeah, I will
okay,
set him up for
back
this.
To Brian.
But it's like, that you're in the sweet spot when it doesn't feel like you're trying too hard. And I'm going to hand that off to him to elaborate.
Go for it, Brian.
Thank you for that wonderful tee off. We have a phrase that we use at the agency. So we have a writer's room going all day on Slack. We have amazing writers, and they're in it every day. They're on social. They're looking for stuff. They're trying to jump on stuff or figure out what not to jump on. And when I look at the work, when it comes to me, the way I kill stuff is I say it feels too sweaty. And what that means for us at Mint is we have a rule: be effortless and be unexpected. And part of that is because what we are offering is pretty unexpected, right? Like, it's tied back to the actual strategy of not only the brand, but the product that we're selling. And so we got to match that when we're online. I think you can do less than you think you should. When I want to go back and look through our social feeds like a week later and say, that's still funny to me, that post we did, or that comment we did, or that thing that retweeted, or that stitch we did on TikTok. I don't want to go back in a week and be like, what was this about? I don't even remember what this was for. Stuff moves fast, right? So don't let people feel the effort that's going into it, which is tremendous, right? Like, we all have teams, we're all doing this every day. It's a lot of hard work to stay on top of this stuff. But if you can kind of surf those algorithms in a way where it feels like, yeah, these people are just hanging out and being fun, and that's really the way to kind of conquer it, I think.
Great. David, want to jump in now? Definition of culture.
So, yeah, since we're on a school day, we're talking about a term that almost
with the champagne.
harkens back to my third grade. What is culture? And if I look at it simply, when I hear the word culture, it's often attached to some sort of sports organization. What's the culture like there? Or a large organization like American Airlines, or whatever it might be, or even maybe a race or a people or a country. What is the culture there? And so what is that defining thread? What are the values? What do they care about? That's going to define their culture. How they think, how they punish, reward, how they incentivize. What is ever important, even in my own family, what is our culture of the family? And so it's a pretty broad thing. I know I'm not really diving into specifics, but if I were to distill it down into what's probably a really complex discussion of what is culture, is what is meaningful to that group that you're talking about.
That's great. Sonia?
Yeah, I love that, actually. I think I was thinking about what is culture and then also kind of like what is marketing. For me, when I think of culture, I feel it's effortless. So let's say, I was born in Ghana. So when I'm in Ghana, when I look at the billboards and I'm listening to radio, like, it's just effortless. It just feels right. I'm not thinking too hard. But if I'm marketing the same product here in America, how would I then market to that culture if I'm looking at it from that standpoint? But at the same time, as a brand, what are my values? What are their values, and do I align with their values and their culture, right? And then I'm thinking about, okay, well, what is their demo? Are they a Gen Z Ghanaian or a Gen X Ghanaian? So it's then, okay, I have to understand who my brand is. How do I fit into their culture, and how do I talk to them but still being my brand? So it's very complicated the way I'm talking about it. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just effortless, like knowing that you are moving with the flow versus trying to go upstream.
That's an elegant idea. It's like the water you're swimming in.
Yeah.
What is the water you're swimming in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jessica?
What is the water I'm swimming in?
What's the definition of water?
The existential discussion here.
Something we are not drinking.
We're going to go
here
back
at
down.
Brand
It's all right.
Innovators.
Too much champagne up here.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to expand upon what I already shared, I really do think it is about figuring out what our brand does for our guests and just not taking ourselves too seriously about that. I think there was a time where I hearken it to our Tumblr era, that we felt very serious. And the work that we do, I am proud of the foundation that we built, but I'm excited in this next chapter to really help showcase to folks what it is that we do to make their lives easier. And so one of the things that we've done is really tapped into this articulation that we've come up with internally, which is see what's cooking. In our category, there is really nobody that is cooking to the level that we are. Like, on my first day of Dig, I put on an apron, I went back there, and they're like, okay, you're going to make pesto. I had never made pesto. I always bought like Trader Joe's pesto. Now I'll never not make pesto, because now I actually appreciate, what are the 3 ingredients that go into making that at home. And so that being my first memory as an employee at Dig, I realized that that's the story we have to tell. We have to bring you back into our kitchen so you can see what's cooking. And so today, when we launch a new product, that's what we do, is we invite influencers into our space and we literally show them how we make it. We launched a crispy chicken a few weeks ago, and I was in there taking notes, just listening to chefs saying like all the tips about how to prepare a chicken at home. We sent folks home with a kit on how to make it. And so they're probably not going to make it, but they feel, especially as creators that are looking to tell a story, right? right? Like they probably get invited to all kinds of dinners and take pictures of plates, what have you, but to be able to go behind the scenes and tell a story about the way that our product is made and hopefully give them a platform to even maybe talk about their own relationship with cooking, those are the things that I get excited about as a marketer.
I love that.
That is
Brian.
such a great example of the way to do it right? Which is, we talk a lot as marketers, and we're talking right now, right, about culture. That's what's out there. Your internal culture is going to come through. So the fact that you guys did that and you went and you were invited into the kitchen and you got to learn how to do it means you guys get to do that and tell that message out there. Where you get absolutely thrashed online is when people can tell the way that you operate your business and the way that you all even work together as coworkers, or the way you're structured, is not lining up with what you're saying to us. And people can tell. They can smell it a mile away. So I always say, like, you better have your internal culture right if you're going to get out there and start mixing it up culturally, because it's going to come through whether you think it is or not.
That's great. Thanks for that. I'm thinking that I hear that and I think culture is what's changing you. And so brands using culture are reaching people for who they are, not just what they want. Yeah. All right. Next topic is, what is a hot topic you're dealing with now? And I'd actually like to invite Sonia to jump in on this one from our conversation earlier.
Yeah, hot topic. So what you're saying, Brian, about internal, right? So I'm working on a new brand, really exciting brand. Launches in May. Can't wait for everyone to see it. But right now we're working on a new brand, and we're really thinking about like the brand tone of voice, right? And trying to be authentic about it. And this audience is more the Gen Z, multicultural, urban street. So we're really trying to understand, how do we use AAVE, right? Ebonics, or whatever you want to call it.
Or Black English.
Black English.
African American vernacular English is
Yes.
phrase. Yep.
And, I think since 2020, I know a lot of businesses and corporations have been more focused on diversity and inclusion. But I think that since then, now we're in 2024, a lot of companies are kind of moving away from that. And there are a lot of talking points, but being on a brand and, going for this audience and also being the only member in this community, it's a challenge having to distinguish my tone of voice versus the brand's tone of voice, and being the only representative of this culture, this community on the team. And it's challenging, right? It's challenging to have to persuade your senior leaders that it's worth investing in research. It's worth investing in additional support. Maybe it's a creative agency or a copywriter. When they're like, well, you can do it, Sonia. I'm like, well, actually, I don't know. I'm not the audience, but I think I'm cool. I think I'm Gen Z, but I don't want to say or use language that's not authentic to them or real to them, just because you think that I can. And I could save you some money by not hiring outside support. So that's my hot topic. I'm probably going to be in the hot seat when I go back.
That's awesome.
Spicy.
It is. It's a little too spicy.
So actually, I'd like to invite the other panelists to just comment on that topic. You guys want to say anything?
I mean, what I relate to in that is thinking about, I am a millennial, but I have a team of Gen Z. And so, I defer to them a lot about what is tonally appropriate for us as a brand. And also, I think another thing that I have come to reflect upon is the people that actually work in our restaurants, and how do we make sure that they're represented as a part of our brand, And so that's one of the things that our audience has really enjoyed is we actually just put our teams at the forefront of our brand on social. If you look up our Instagram, you'll see Chef Amber is like one of the fan favorites. And really all we did with Amber was we put like a fisheye lens camera on her, and we do this series called Clear the Board that has performed really well on social. And I think the reason that people like it is because it's completely unscripted. It is in the brand voice of the people that actually work in our restaurants, which, you know, she's a New Yorker. There's a whole vernacular around the way that she talks and engages with the team that I think reflects the real essence, the real experience of actually coming into a dig. But it's challenging what you're referring to in terms of like making sure that you're doing that in a way that is thoughtful, authentic, that doesn't feel performative.
And it's not appropriating. That's the word, right?
Yes.
So, gentlemen, any other comments, observations about that challenge?
It's absolutely a challenge. And the tension is around the complexities of who you are as a brand and who you are as a target consumer. I mean, we're all complex. Me being Asian, we're complex. Someone who's a woman is complex. It's just not about, do you have kids or no kids? And so when you interact with somebody in the way we interact with a consumer, it's usually very quick. But to understand those layers of complexities might take a second or third. Let's talk about dating. Maybe it's a fourth date. So for example, Kellogg and our brands. Most people don't know that we're owned by, we're governed by a trust, a charitable trust, 51%. We don't talk about that because W.K. Kellogg, who started the company, said, hey, I want to give to the poor. I want to make sure people are fed. I want to make sure that, we as a company are fulfilling those of all, situations. But we don't talk about that. But that's something that maybe in your community, we're doing a food drive or something like that, and then you're starting to learn about that. But on our Instagram posts, we're not going to say that right out of the gate. Or, for us, LGBTQ is a huge passion point for us internally. And kudos to a company that used to be our headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan, to have that for decades. And there's been rankings of companies on LGBTQ friendly lists, and we're consistently for the last many, 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 many years been at the top. And so, but that's not something that we will talk about right away. And so the challenge is, you're complex, we're complex, but what do we talk about first in our first engagement? We may not go down to that third or fourth level, but let's talk about something that is meaningful to you in a way that it's going to hit a lot of people, and is going to be meaningful to you in that way. We'd rather go there first, than what potentially might be in a third or fourth interaction.
That's great. Thank you. And Brian?
Yeah, I think for us, and this goes back to, I think, kind of like when you got into the industry in your own career, things have changed massively. When I was a kid growing up, I had every Michael Jordan poster on my wall that Nike produced, and I didn't know that those were just photo stills from Wyden Kennedy commercials, right? But I could kind of feel it somehow when I started learning more about that stuff. And back then, if you were at an agency or a brand like a Nike or a Wyden Kennedy, you could, like you were saying earlier, just push things out into the culture and make them part of it, because there was a monoculture and you had a wrapped audience that was receiving it whether they liked it or not. We don't have that anymore. And so we don't have that role, I don't think, either, as marketers and advertisers and people that work at brands. You've got to kind of sit back and listen a lot more and see where the people are, and then see, well, where does the Venn diagram, like you're talking about, where does our culture and their culture, where do we intersect? And it's fun to get creative with that stuff, right? Like, I know a big challenge for our creative team was, our social director came to me and was like, hey, if we're going to be successful on TikTok, and it was just starting to blow up, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, as the main place we needed to be on social, we got to be posting every day. That's insane to put that on your team. How can you possibly have anything good to say or interesting to say every single day? And so we had a big brainstorm, and our team was really struggling. And I was like, well, we sell wireless plans, right? It's an essential service basically now. You have to have a phone. what does that mean for us? Where are we allowed to go with that, where it doesn't feel sweaty and doesn't feel like, wow, you guys are really over your skis and out of your depth? If it happens on a phone, we get to talk about it. That unlocked so much stuff for our team, because now they're like, here's a funny, still from text from my mom last night, and the font's like 43 point, and like, there's all these little nuances that then feel real because it's how we all communicate. But that's an entire culture of how we communicate via text and in group threads and on social and stuff. So I think the challenge is always kind of like being able to sit back and not go into that old mindset still of like, well, how do I solve this? How do we solve this? What's our idea? I think if you sit back and start listening and just kind of like take a look around, you can find there's a lot of ideas out there that you can help amplify or jump into where it feels correct.
That's great. So does anyone else have another hot topic to nominate?
I have a question about Kellogg. And
by the way, I know where this is going, but Kellogg is a separate company than Kellanova. We did spin off the cereal business in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. And so I believe I know what your question is, but please go ahead.
Your opinion
Juicy.
on the recent, I guess, discourse around cereal and having it for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Just curious
I figured
about culture.
So, it is a separate company. It is not my CEO. But, they have a prerogative to market the way they want to market and communicate the way they communicate. And that's basically all I could say. It's a separate company. And I really don't have anything to do with that. Now,
I think they were trying. I think that their intent was there. It just, the delivery.
Yeah, for me, what I'm proud about for Kellanova is how much I personally, I joined I came from an alcohol company. I came from Molson Coors. And what I love about Kellanova is the wonderful match of my personal values with the company values. Things like LGBTQ+. Or my family, on a Friday night, you'll see us handing out home-cooked pizzas and water bottles to the homeless in our community. And whether it's homeless or whether it's just people who just need, community. So I'm personally very passionate about helping my local community. That's it. And so is Kellanova. And I love that about us. So it's very authentic. We kind of talked the talk, and I wasn't sure if that was the case when I got interviewed. It was like, are you really that way? But when I got in, we absolutely are. And I couldn't be prouder of that. But yeah, we're just trying to help people no matter what demographic you are, what slice of life, what stage of your life. And I love that.
I would like to just build on a combination of those two things. When you were talking about having a right to be in the conversation about all things phone, that's how I feel about DIG, is we have a point of view on cooking. And that has really opened our aperture so that when we are engaging on social, I hope that you don't feel like we're trying to sell you our latest menu item, but that we are in the conversation around cooking. Case in point, like I would love to jump on the controversy of that comment, because we have a point of view on whether or not cereal is an appropriate meal, so anyways.
Gotcha. So that actually is oh, sorry, David, you wanted to jump in. Please.
No, go ahead. You had a question that you posed before we got on that very interesting topic about hot topics and stuff like that, but I'll let you keep going.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
All right. So this actually is a nice tie-in to an amazing stat that our research surfaced. So we do an annual survey called America Now, 4,500 consumers, quite a good number, right? And in that survey, this is like in August or September, 72% of consumers said that, quote, brands and companies should be involved in social and political issues in some way. 72%. And it's much higher, getting well into the 80s, when you look at some of the core higher growth demographics, Hispanic, Black, LGBTQ+, Gen Z. They're even higher. They're like 80 to, this is a really big number, actually. So I'm just really curious, when you hear that, how do you respond to that? Like, does it make you go panic? Oh my God, we have nothing to say about Dobbs. That's the last thing I want to do. Or how do you lean in?
I think the key part of that statistic is the last three words, in some way, right? For us, our whole promise is we took what's wrong with wireless and made it right. That means we get to go after the big guys. We get to, be this kind of little engine that could. There's a way we could keep going with that could get all the way to let's overthrow capitalism, right? Like if we're really going to dig down on what's wrong with Verizon and AT&T, like you could get to the root of the whole economic system if you wanted to. But that's not in that phrase. That's in our brand promise. We didn't take what was wrong with capitalism and make it right. We didn't take what was wrong with society and make it right. We took what was wrong with wireless and made it right. And I think, and I tell our creative team this all the time, and I tell the people on the brand team that write the briefs for us, there's a misconception, especially among creatives and creative professionals, that the way to do good creative work is to think outside the box, right? We've all heard that. It's the opposite. It's to build the smallest box possible and then get inside of it and stay there and decorate the shit out of it. So I think it's really important for brands to know that that's true, number one, but also if you get outside of your box, things are going to get a little messy. And whether it's cereal for dinner or what happened with Bud Light last year, like, again, people know when there's something cynical behind it. They can tell. And if you back away from something that you came out and said, well, this is important and this is a group we want to recognize, and then you turn tail as soon as it gets hard out there with your core demographic, that's going to make you look worse than if you'd never done it at all. So you have to have those conversations internally.
Yeah. We have the stats to show that too. Yeah. David, you want to jump in on that question?
Well, I'll let you guys comment on that.
I just want to say, Brian, we are kindred spirits. I just could not agree more with what you just said. My box is we have a point of view on cooking. So if we are going to be involved in a social issue, that's the extent to which DIG has a point of view, right? So, we celebrated International Women's Day /month. And so we sent food to the restaurant teams and said, how do you want to celebrate the women in your kitchen? That's it. That's our point of view. And I think we've seen when other brands kind of fail to have a point of view on key issues, it's really hard to partake in issues in a way that's really thoughtful and appropriate. And so that's the extent to which I think that we should be involved in those conversations, is the connectiveness of cooking. How do we bring people together over a shared meal? That's my box.
Sonia, any comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. OkCupid, I was very fortunate to work for a very progressive company, but we are all about matching on what matters. And giving everybody opportunity to meet your person, no matter your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation. And we really stood by that. We stood on business, we stand on business. And what I really appreciate about my senior leadership is they never wavered. So when they had a brand campaign and people were in the subways ripping them down, or on any sort of political show talking about OkCupid and being too liberal, we doubled down. When we're banned from the subways in San Francisco, they tripled down. And it kind of really just taught me from the first time just to see, this is what happens when you are who you are. We don't need your money. We don't want your support. This is who we are. We are DTF, down to find. And we stood by it, and you stand on it. And so when there are things that happen within, the discourse or something that happens politically, we have every right to be there. Matter of fact, they ask us to be there, because we stand on business. And that's how I see it. If you can't stand on it and really support it, then you shouldn't be in that box. You stay in your box.
Yeah.
We have a phrase, top brands don't back down. David, do you want any comment there? You're good? Okay. All right. So, very deft. All right, we're going to start to move towards wrapping up. One more question that we all have time for, and then we'll do some Q&A. What are your sources for cultural insights and stuff like that? What do you turn to? Tech, demographic characteristics? What does AI mean to you? All that stuff. Who wants to jump in on that one?
like to get started. Talk about AI for a second. I was having a conversation over breakfast. Obviously a very hot topic, but a lot of marketers, we like to be forward-looking. And the challenge with AI is, can it tell the future? What's the next partnership that we should do that's going to really move the needle? What's the next XYZ that we can do to really move the needle? I don't know, but right now I think that's a challenge to leverage. Well, how can you do culture in the best way? I just don't know if I could input that into something that leverages swaths of data from the past in mass to be able to do something that's breakout, new, and different for the future. So sources of culture, a lot of it is, one, I think in the context of what we're talking about lately, of what culture is defined to the majority of this panel, is about where does our leadership stand on some of these, and that helps us define us, and that's our true north. But also when it comes to your target consumer's culture, well, there's a lot of input. I mean, just having open eyes and ears, you could see what's trending for different consumers. Now, if you're looking at a heartland consumer versus an urban consumer, it might be different. For example, Crocs might be good for an urban consumer, and maybe Hey Dudes are great for, the heartland, for example. And I know this because, that company has stated that, this part of their strategy. But yeah, for us, it's we've got a lot of talented people, from agencies to insights to even our partners that we're working with. Like, for example, last year we did a Tony the Tiger Moschino worldwide dresses. A couple $100 for a T-shirt, or a couple of $1,000 for an outfit that has, orange stripes. Or we did a Puma Tony the Tiger shoe. Or we did a Pringles and Caviar last year that got 2 billion impressions. Or we did a Eggo brunch in a jar last year, also above 2 billion impressions. And so we're constantly doing things that's strategic passion points for a given brand that matches the brand's values and personality. And so with that ecosystem that we have, we're able to see, well, what's the conversation sort of moving towards, And it's hard to use data to go, this is where we're all moving towards. It's kind of like, will inflation go up or down? Well, can ChatGPT tell us? I don't know if we can. But if we have enough of what we're seeing as a trend, we can kind of tell a little bit of the future before it happens, whether it's culture in any form of fashion you want to define it.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
I mean, not very groundbreaking, but just talking to our guests, it's pretty simple. I mean, case in point, from like a menu innovation standpoint, our core demo is young professionals in Manhattan. But as we've moved further outside of that into suburban markets, we've had to get a better sense for that next chapter of their lives when they become parents. And so we had to launch a kids menu, and the team brought a variety of options that were rooted in vegetables is very core to our menu. So like, oh, parents want to give their kids vegetables. Well, I'm a mom of toddlers, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not fighting with my kids in a restaurant about whether or not to eat broccoli. Like, that's a fight I have in my home. When I take my kids out, I want them to pick something so that my husband and I can enjoy a meal. And so, like, for me, that was a core insight that wasn't landing with the menu team, frankly, that maybe weren't in that chapter of their lives. So I'm like, okay, you don't have to, N of one. Let's just bring them in. So just like we have such an active and engaged audience, just sent an email and said, we're looking for parents to come in. And we had a conversation with them. And it unlocked so much for the menu team to hear it from 10 parents saying, the meatballs can't touch the rice. You need like dividers. Like, I need pizza. I need tenders. And it completely overhauled the way that we launch this kids menu. So I think a lot of times, like, we're a small brand. We don't have a lot of money for like fancy insights and whatnot. And sometimes the best is just like call them up, bring them in, and get that firsthand feedback.
That's great.
I think that's the exact kind of complexity that you were talking about, right? Like, to be like, you're a parent, so you want your kids to be healthy, so that's what we need to do. It's all contextual, right? Like, things change constantly. For us, it's doing a ton of listening. It's not demographics at all. We literally do not use demographics because for us, it's about behavior, right? Like, trying to get someone who even hates their wireless company to switch is still terrifying. It's one of the scariest things you can do because you need your phone and you need your contacts and you don't know if you can bring your number and all these other things. So instead of us fighting those and saying, no, you don't understand, you can, we go, we totally get it. Here's some more information. we totally get you're still scared. Here's some more information. And we trust that people will come once they feel ready. And so we've built our whole business model around that. Everything from our e-com funnel to the way that we do stuff on social is, this is a choice that has to happen when these people are ready. And all the data and all the price comparisons in the world can't tackle that emotional component of, oh, but am I gonna be able to text my mom? Am I still gonna have my numbers? So you have to listen to people and see when they say that. So we don't have a target demo at all, which people think is insane. But again, we're like, everybody needs a phone. So we are marketing to everybody. How do you kind of break that down? It's attitude and it's context and it's all those things.
No, that's great. Sonia, final word on sources of culture.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty simple. So, like, I like the Steelers. I just go on X or Twitter and I'm watching it with the rest of the Steelers fans, right? And I feel like I'm right in the middle of the action, right? I like the Real Housewives. When it's on, I go on X and I'm just like, oh yeah, and I'm getting different perspectives, either side, right? And that's when I really feel engaged because I know what people are saying who aren't influenced by anything else, right? And for me, that's like the best insights I can use, especially being a small brand. But I just think about myself and how do I communicate with people? You know, what kind of conversations would I want to have with people? And I think we're fortunate to live in this social media agent world because it's like we can actually just talk to them. They will talk to you, where back in the day, we didn't have any of that, right? So if you want to know what a customer thinks about you right now, you could probably just go on some social and they will tell you.
That's awesome. Do we have time for a couple questions? Okay, great. Fantastic. Audience.
Alrighty, so my question is about how do you move at the speed of culture across multiple cultures and maybe a multinational brand? How do you keep that top of mind when you're dealing with a broad swath of consumers, different interests, different values, and very distinct and different cultures?
I guess maybe that's a question for me.
Sure.
Let's take Pringles. Multinational brand. A lot of people eat Pringles. So when I talked about what my role is in the beginning, it's about elevating our brand and recruiting using lifestyle and culture. We don't go after one specific, let's say, demographic slice. In fact, I'd much rather do it in a way that's a strategic passion point for a given brand. Let's take music. So Pringles has been at music festivals last year, and that's just a really important strategic passion point for our target consumer. So we'll go in deep in that and try to offer value to our target consumer through that method. What we don't do is, let's use me as an example. I'm Asian American. Hey, there's other Asians over there. Let's go talk. The level of passion that I have meeting another person on the surface who's just Asian doesn't excite me as much because I know we're all complex, we're all different. But once I know that you are not Asian and maybe you like the same EDM Diplo, for example, I don't know, and we're both Diplo heads or Taylor Swift head, automatically we have a shared passion point. You could be Asian, you could be black, you could be white, you could be gay, straight, all that. And so for us, that traditional demo gets transcended to a particular strategic passion point that gets narrow and meaningful to their targets. And it could just be a great swath, multinationally, multiculturally, all of that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you guys so much for sharing today. I really appreciate you guys.